Hello everyone, Porter Thorndike here. I am the product manager for TIBCO WebFOCUS. Super excited to share with you a topic that I have spent my career working on, which is real strength of TIBCO WebFOCUS, enterprise reporting and distribution. So let's take a quick look at the agenda. The agenda today is all about reporting and distribution. I want to take you through the key capabilities that WebFOCUS brings to the table in terms of reporting. And I'm going to kind of break that into a couple different categories. The first is, people think of reporting and they think of tabular reports. WebFOCUS does so much more than that. And ultimately what we see many people doing is using the report as the foundation to create these highly parameter driven applications that are really the foundation that many of our customers use the product to create kind of applications that are used by very large numbers of people that don't require training. And then we're going to take a look at reporting capabilities. What can we do beyond the tabular report? It goes much further beyond there. We'll take a look at some examples. And we'll take a look at distribution. Distribution pairs well with reporting, right? If you think about people consuming reports, like a lot of people may log into a portal to run those reports. We have a scheduling and distribution capability that would be able to leverage those reports and burst and distribute them on different schedules. And we'll take a look at, we actually go beyond kind of standard output formats as well. So we'll take a look at that. And last, we'll take a look at what are some cool things that are happening in the area of reporting and distribution? What are we hearing from our customers? So let's take a look at some examples of this. When I talk about reporting and I talk about applications, I think everyone's familiar with or has consumed reports that are parameterized, right? That maybe have filtering criteria. And if you think about how people use applications on the web, consumer applications like Expedia, clearly people are comfortable with an approach like this. And so this example right here is a good example of how our customers use an underlying report to expose parameters on a form like this that is kind of like intuitive and friendly for people to use. Let's assume that I'm an investor or a financial advisor. And if I wanted to research mutual funds that are a good fit for me or for my investor, I might start on a page like this. Like you might go to a Fidelity website or Putnam Investments website and see a screen like this if you're researching mutual funds. And so in this case, it's presented in a question format, but it's ultimately controls, right? So button controls, drop downs. How important are returns to you? How sensitive to expenses are you? And so the concept here is called progressive disclosure that is supported by WebFOCUS. And the idea is that if someone is researching mutual funds, if you are looking to book an airline ticket, does it make sense to put someone on a page with every parameter possible, right? Like, what type of volatility is acceptable to you? What report criteria do you want on the report? What output format do you want? A lot of usability studies would say that overwhelms the user. So progressive disclosure actually takes a look at a use case like researching mutual funds. And it says, give the person a landing page that's simple and does not overwhelm them, that focuses their attention on the key questions they need to answer. And so if you're researching mutual funds, it might be questions like this. And I could say, I am sensitive to expenses and I'm looking for no fee funds. And the idea here is that the user makes some selections and refines those selections. And then when they click the results button, like, doesn't this feel like shopping for a television or for an airline ticket or for a mutual fund? The workflow takes you to the next page where it will progressively expose additional options and criteria so that it is easy to use. And so a lot of our customers are building experiences and applications like this because they find that it is familiar for their users. But it's ultimately just parameterized reports, right? But it's being kind of designed and structured in a way that is familiar to people. So in this case, we see that we've got 131 funds. I've retained those original selections across the top. I could change them at any time. I could go back at any time. And this is where we may expose secondary criteria. So someone could say low volatility funds are important to me. And they could further refine their selections, right? That could be anything. That could be any type of web control, drop down, radio button, these types of button sliders are popular as well. And I'm continuing to refine my selections. The other thing that WebFOCUS is very strong at, right? Because I think a lot of people are kind of familiar with the parameterized report concept, where you have a report and there are filters. So one of the things that WebFOCUS does above and beyond that traditional type of parameterized reporting experience is the WebFOCUS product in the WebFOCUS language is so flexible that it can expose anything as a parameter. And that gives you ultimate flexibility when designing applications like this. So as we look at the kind of collapsible optional parameters area, this is a good example of some of the things that we do that are a little different than what we see other solutions doing. And that would be, you might want to allow the user to change the criteria or the attributes of the report itself. Right? Like if someone wanted to sort this by fund category, you could expose as variable what that primary sort field is. Or you may want to expose as variable what the measurement criteria is. Like, the default may be good for most people, but for me, I may not be interested in these metrics. I may be more interested in things like the volatility, and the risk. So you can kind of expose these as options that would allow people to tailor even the content of the report themselves. And then another popular one is output formats. Exporting to output formats is generally offered by a lot of people. HTML, PDF, and PowerPoint or PNG would be most popular. We also extend that to a couple really cool formats. One of them is HTML active report. What is this? So this is an interactive type of report. It gives you out-of-the-box interactive capabilities to do things like sorting, filtering, calculations, charting, pivoting, visualization, annotation. I can save it. We see a lot of people liking this report format just for connected applications. What's super cool that you're going to see about this when we get to distribution is that this format works disconnected. So it actually embeds data and interactive controls into the report, into an HTML5 document. It works great on mobile devices. And you can imagine the value of an interactive report or document once distributed, even though it's disconnected from the analytics environment. So that's a good example of the type of application that a lot of people are building. Kind of simple example, right? With like 2 screens. A lot of people are doing 1 screen, but believe it or not, I have a customer that created an application with 7 levels of progression. And it generates millions of variations of reports. That right there, that's the secret sauce of how we do reporting. Let me show you one other capability that's super important. Yeah, Porter, yes, highly parameter-driven screens that are prompted. We get it. What about the underlying report? Like this is a super simple tabular report right here. Let me show you an example of a much more sophisticated type of report. Of course, we do tabular reports across different formats, and they can be interactive. One of our customers, ProShares, and many of our customers are doing this, are creating very high-end documents that are much more than a tabular report. So they're pixel perfect. They combine images, borders, text, reports, charts, all on one page. And then you can even support kind of like multiple different pages to create report booklets. You could create boardroom quality documents, end of year statements, annual statements. It extends to financial reporting, balance sheets, income statements. A lot of people are creating invoices in this way. They could be different page layouts. You could dynamically create table of contents. It could be interactive. And so the reporting capabilities go far beyond a tabular report into this type of realm of a pixel perfect document. What's cool about the reports that are created is also the intelligence that's built into them in terms of being able to burst and distribute them. That becomes important, not just if you're front-ending it with a parameter-driven screen. It becomes important once you want to start using these for distribution. One of the first projects I worked on when I started at Information Builders was Harvard Management Company. It was a customer of ours. They manage Harvard University's investments, and they had like a 7-page investor statement. And it was pages like this, income statements, balance sheets and things like that. And what we can do is we can take any report that we create and we can add what I'll call is a coordinated field. So let's assume that the coordinated field in that case was an investor ID. That investor ID can be matched up with an address book. Let's say of their email address and investor ID. That's the key to the bursting and distribution, how we can use any of these reports once we move over into the distribution world to kind of design one or multi-page document or report, but then burst and distribute it, but also tie it to these parameter-driven screens. One thing that I want to show you is the foundation for this application. It was created entirely in a graphical interface, right? Where we design a report and then we say, we create filters. We say, these are the filters that we want available as variable selections. And then we say, I want variable dimension, I want variable measure, I want variable output format, as an example. Created entirely in the GUI. But one thing that I want to impress on you is how flexible the language is to expose anything as a parameter. And that is the original focus language that we take a look at right here. When you are designing a report in the graphical interface, this is what it's producing underneath the covers. So if I'm saying, hey, I want a report where the user can select any of these sort fields, right? There's a menu to kind of make these selections, but it is clearly auditable or customizable, right, to anyone that is a developer that wants to roll their sleeves up. Likewise, this is where we would say, I want the user to be able to select any of these measures. And likewise, when we're selecting filter criteria, instead of saying, hey, I want the net assets to be this, we're just saying, I want the net assets to be variable. And this is the code that it's creating. Likewise for the output format down here. As you're doing that, you're also allowed to create default values. The default values solve two purposes. First and foremost, the default value in a prompt, once that prompt is configured on a page. Secondly, these can act as default values if you don't even want to prompt a user for that value. The other reason I show this to you is, yes, sorting, measurement, output format, and filtering are the most common parameters that we see being exposed, but we actually have a lot of customers that go beyond this. Anything, do you want to prompt for a style sheet, a custom heading, a drill down, a drill target, a subheading, any attribute you may want to prompt for can be exposed simply by adding an ampersand in front of the attribute in this report code. That is the foundation that allows us to. This session is not really all about building. I've got another breakout that's more all about building, but let me give you a quick feel for how like a variable report like this could be created and laid out very quickly. So I'm going to go to my home page and I'm going to say I want to assemble visualizations. I could go with no template. It's actually very easy to build in on a page things like that primary filter toolbar across the top, the secondary panel down on the left, and the collapsible format. And I'll look at that in more detail in another session. But we also have templates that make it super easy. So this info app right here, we say, this is a very commonly used type of template for kind of like what we call like a results page type of parameterized report. So let's just make it a template. And you'll notice that I can find that report that drives all of those selections that I just showed you. So that's in my financial services workspace. and I'm going to look at fund research, and that is my mutual fund results report. I just drag it into the page, watch what happens. This is the WebFOCUS Designer, by the way. The design product for anyone that's going to create content. It's identified 9+ filters. Now you'll notice I could choose the filters to add to the page. I could add all of them to the page. There's also filtering options where it could be a modal window. But I'm going to say add all of the filters to the page. And I'm not going to customize this and lay it out, but to give you a feel. All of those default values now, you'll notice as I make selections, like they show up right here. And you'll notice things like I can convert it to a different control. I could combine these controls, or I can move them around. That page that I showed you, it can be assembled in minutes. And there's a lot of kind of properties over here that allow us to create these types of applications and handle the handoff of the progression, right, from one page to the next. How do we allow for selections made on one page to be carried on to the next? So a lot of control in the settings over here over whether this is optional. Do we have a search controller? There's selection controls. The parameter name and things like that. So the parameter name is what knows if selections are made on this, as long as you have the same parameter name on the second page. That's how it knows as we move across progressions to pass those type of capabilities down the line. So that's a quick look at what the design experience is like. Some other things that I want to show you within the WebFOCUS Designer. That's like how we would design the application, but just core reporting capabilities within the WebFOCUS Designer. I've laid out a report very quickly right here. Okay, so a couple things that you can notice about this. Just capabilities in terms of common things like, do I want to count it up? Do I want to add a counter? Some of the options around calculation, some of the options around sorting, ranking is going to be a very important capability in reporting. Of course, breaks around pages or aggregate columns and numbering. Adding lines is going to be important. Of course, formatting of the data drill down is a strength that we offer within our reporting solution as well as we take a look at this. There's actually a lot of options in here. Auto drill is a common and popular one. That is, you have a hierarchy, you want to drill down and up that hierarchy, but there are other options as well. So custom drill paths, think of this more as linking, or you can actually configure a menu of drillable assets. So drill down is a strength of ours within the reporting solution as well. As we take a look at the options on metrics as well. Quick transforms to simplify complex calculations around rolling aggregation, moving aggregation as well. And really a lot on filtering. But just want to give you a feel for some of the quick, important capabilities from a reporting perspective. This is where you'll notice the different output formats as well. I'll just show you kind of AHTML, where we get that menu that we took a look at before, okay, which has actually been revamped. A lot that you can do here. The idea is that if we distribute this type of report to you, that you can actually give people these analytical capabilities just embedded right within the report. So, you can kind of create visualizations off of the data. You can add annotations within the data. You could filter the data that we see right here. And then it's all interactive, like as you make selections, even though it's completely disconnected from the analytics environment. So that is known as Analytics Anywhere. Let me show you another example and some of the trends that we're seeing in terms of where people are going from a reporting perspective. I'm going to go into a customer profile that I have right here on one of my dashboards. So one direction that people are going is when they think about a tabular report, or they think about that Analytics Anywhere type of example, is they are thinking to themselves, how do people want to receive their information from a reporting perspective? So in the past, people have maybe received tabular reports. So often people are absolutely using that Analytics Anywhere type of technology to transition from what used to be, hey, here's a report of the performance that you got, And, I kind of showed you real quick some of that interactive capability, but then trying to surface a kind of a more textual or graphical view using like text gauges or charts, and remember, entirely interactive. So this is one of the key, this to me is the best use case for distribution of analytics anywhere, interactive e-statement, because you think about all of these organizations going paperless. People are used to receiving printouts of their investor statements. Companies are saying, we want to go paperless because we want to save money on printing and mailing of those. And so everyone gets a static digital PDF. And a lot of studies say that does not improve customer satisfaction or retention, that people want more. That if you can go paperless, but give people interactivity, give them something more, something they couldn't do with their printed or PDF statement, that actually increases customer satisfaction and retention. And so when you pair a report like this, or it could be anything, Excel, PDF, PowerPoint, any of the report formats that we support, when you pair that with our distribution capability, you end up with a very powerful combination. The ability to design one document, but distribute it to millions of recipients with one schedule, one address book, and one piece of content. Let's take a look at what that looks like. So, if I were to create a report in Designer, that interactive e-statement, I could save this off, I'm done, and then we could identify what I'll call the coordinated field, what we're going to coordinate that based on. So if I take that report and I activate the scheduler, you'll notice we could deliver it FTP, printer, back into the repository. Email is probably the most popular that we see. We have an out-of-the-box scheduler. This is also exposed via an API as well. So you notice the first thing that we look at is, where do we want this to go? One person? Do we want this to go to a list, a file? If it's a list, this is what we like for, think about creating a report that is your investor email address and the investor ID, right? So that's where we could make that selection. And we could customize the subject, and then we could say the report is embedded as an inline message, or it's an attachment. We could actually zip it up. We could zip up multiple types of documents. The task is where it's been pre-selected for us. We want to, distribute this report. But if you were to create a schedule from scratch, this is where you could actually add multiple tasks. So if you wanted to distribute a booklet of content, you could actually do that right there. Notice the burst option. When we turn on the burst option, this is where it's going to match up the coordinated field with the field that we have in our address list or address book to say, run this report and then distribute a slice to each person by essentially applying the filter value to that report. The recurrence is where we're going to select, is this run once? Is it every month? Support for things like company holidays, blackout dates, all of that thing. It can also be alert or data driven. It can only be triggered based on a certain time. Okay, and then a lot more settings in here as well around notification and logging of this as well. So that's kind of how the scheduler works. The other thing that I'll highlight for you is what direction are people taking in terms of reporting and distribution. So, traditional, this is a very common approach, even though, we see great strengths in our product in terms of being able to kind of parameterize anything, create these multiple prompted screens, analytics anywhere being a unique and innovative type of format. The other thing that we see happening is people are even going further from a distribution perspective. In the past, where they may have accepted PDF and Excel or PowerPoint as their format, and now they're starting to move more towards an interactive e-statement or a portable analytics document. We also see a demand for people receiving their information more visually that actually tells a story. And so Strava is an app that I use. I'm not a real athlete, I'm a fake athlete, but it's an app that I use just to track if if I were to go for a bike ride, if I were to go for a run. It gives me a map and it tracks where I've been. And then monthly, they send me an infographic of what I've done. And so infographics are very popular and they're an output format that is supported by WebFOCUS. And we see this to be a real trend in distribution as well, is that people want to receive their information this way. So this is, a combination of visualization and narration that is personalized and data-driven. And so this is a format that has seemed to gain a lot of popularity from a distribution perspective recently. So back to my slide deck. That is 25 minutes of what you need to know about how does WebFOCUS support reporting and distribution? What are the key capabilities and differentiators? And I want to share with you some additional resources as well. One of them is, do you want access to that interactive e-statement I just showed you? Play around with it. It's available in our demo gallery, and I link it right here. Do you want to learn more about WebFOCUS's capabilities from a reporting perspective? We have an ebook that I've linked right here. And lastly, do you just want to learn more about distribution and our distribution capabilities? I've linked you to the section of our website with access to more resources, like a white paper as well. So this has been Porter Thorndike, product manager for TIBCO WebFOCUS. Thank you for taking the time. I hope to get with and meet many of you soon. Thank you.